IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to all new episode of All Things Policy. As you know, Monday is the day that we dedicate to geopolitical and geoeconomic questions. Today we are going to discuss the rise of China and ways in which India could deal with China. There are a few political science concepts in dealing with it. Strategic autonomy, balance of power, bandwagoning, internal balancing, etc. I would like to introduce Lieutenant General Prakash Menon and Aditya Ramanathan, my colleagues from the Takshashila Institution, who are going to discuss these concepts with me and its application in dealing with the China challenge. So, General Menon, would you like to take this question first?
Yes. So first, let's understand that in academia, these are mental constructs to describe either a relationship, a mode of behavior, and to make us understand whether a particular type of relationship or behavior fits into any of these constructs. So fundamentally, they are artificial in nature. It is purely a tool for giving it a name to differentiate it from other types of behavior. So that one thing is, it is not there. It is a lens through which we try to understand the relationship. So obviously, as far as India is concerned, with the rise of China, the question has been in the wind for a long time, that what should be the nature of our relationship with China, not only with China, with the other actors on the global stage. Is there a way that we could describe it and announce it that this is how we feel that we are going to deal with the world? So hence, the wielding of these terms have become loose. They're used interchangeably. And I think we need to sort of try and differentiate between what is normally the case, because others would have different interpretations. Most of these terms are different interpretation depending upon the standpoint. What is your perspective? So since you've used the word strategic autonomy, let's start with this term. By itself, it means the ability to take a decision based on your own interest and not being coerced or decision taken on your behalf from other capitals of the world. So this is about the principle that should guide decision making while India takes a decision. And that is why I was part of Non-Lion Mind 2.0, which used this term. And this is what it actually described: the ability to take independent decisions and not allow your decisions be taken in other parts of the world. So this is a guidance for the practice of foreign policy. It does not describe an overall state of a relationship, which I think is what alliances are about. An alliance is when you are in the same basket with other group of countries and all problems are common. So the NATO is an alliance of the West. We had the Warsaw Pact during the Cold War. And therefore, India, in terms of alliances, has always made it clear that it will never be part of an alliance which has got a military aspect to it, because India is very sensitive not to get involved in others' wars. And that is why, so far, India has been careful to project the image that it will not be part of any military alliance. The only way that it can be part of an international force is under the UN flag. And as you know, India makes a very large contribution in terms of troops and equipment to UN peacekeeping forces. So as far as alliance is concerned, to deal with China in particular, India is unlikely to take up that route. Although alliance belongs to that category of actions in terms of balance of power. And therefore, some strategists in this country are of the view, and they are actually a small minority, that India should bandwagon with the West in trying to deal with China. But I do not think there are many takers for this, what do you call, external balancing, which India would like to do. But the logic is China has become too big, too strong, and therefore India must resort to external balancing. That's the logic. And if you really look at it from the point of view of purely quantitative comparisons between China and India, China has 5 times India's GDP. It spends a hell of a lot more on its military budget, although it spends more even on its internal security budget. And by any measure, China seems to be ahead. But this sort of comparison does not take into account for the fact that absolute comparisons between powers is misleading. The relative strengths matter. China cannot bring its complete strength, absolute strength on India because it's got much bigger problems to deal with. For them, it is the United States, which is the main competitor who can come into conflict with us. Not that we cannot come into conflict with China, but even if it does, Chinese problem on its eastern seaboard in the Western Pacific, with Taiwan and many other issues which go along with it, including Hong Kong, Japan, South China Sea, draws Chinese power into these areas. And therefore, the comparison that we make that we need to bandwagon because China has become so big actually misses the larger point. And that is why the idea of an alliance has been rejected for quite some time, and I don't think that India is going to adopt that. So what actually has come into being really over a period of time, and we might call it by different names, is India's preference for strategic partnerships, which is, if you look at in terms of balance of power, bandwagoning in the same framework, the needle moves towards not being in anybody's camp. It is not the non-aligned movement as we know it, which was a movement of a group of countries which was neither, during the Cold War, neither with the West nor with the Soviet Union. So the non-alignment movement is different from non-alignment as a foreign policy posture, which is that you are not in an alliance with everybody else. So you can say the strategic partnership with India today has embraced, has got the element of non-alignment in not being in anybody's camp, but it is not non-alignment as we know it because it is not part of a group. It is a behavior which is contextual. And that is why strategic partnership fits India much more than any other term. Although it has been criticized that India has become strategic partners with more than 25 to 30 countries in the world, so it has lost its meaning. But one could say that that is not the case because each one of these relationships has to be weighed within the context in which it is being made. So what it tells us is that context is what will determine how India relationship can be described. So we can partner with China on climate change. We can partner with the USA on nuclear non-proliferation. We can partner with Japan and Australia on free and open Indo-Pacific. So the context determines our relationship. And although this particular type of posture has been described variably, nothing describes it better than a partnership, because partnership is contextual. And therefore, As far as China is concerned, these terms which are being used, we have to be understood not because it can be particularly described as an overall posture to the international system, but it is a posture towards different parts of the system at different points in time, depending upon what is the issues of the context of the issues. And that, I think, is much better to understand what India is up to. That's why the West finds it very difficult to actually be in so many places at so many times and yet say that this is some sort of a foreign policy. For them, it has to be black and white. For us, and that's culturally probably how we are oriented, we are quite comfortable with the gray because we believe that relationship finally is neither black nor white, but it is gray.
Sir, that is a fascinating way to introduce conceptual clarity to us, sir. I would like to make a few points. I would like to have a few clarifications, sir. So, for instance, you made a point on strategic autonomy, and it allows us the leverage to go into different camps. For instance, we can go with China on climate change or carbon issues. We can go with USA or the West for Indo-Pacific, the concept of Indo-Pacific. But the broadening partnership between India and US, for example, without nomenclaturing it as alliance, can we still do it? As in, right now we are signing multiple treaties with the United States, which is more or less making us their near allies. Just the nomenclature is left for now. So, can being in an alliance partner, we could still do this, right? Besides the defense concept, we could still be into different camps on different issues, except defense. Can this framework work?
The point is like this, that the US describes this partnership as a special relationships, gives us special privileges, and obviously there are common interests involved, and that is why it is. So we must remember that our relationship in this present form took off in 2008 with a nuclear deal. And that nuclear deal, as far as the US was concerned, and India was still not saying that we are going to this thing, it was about actually how do you manage China and the rise of China. And India was therefore, US felt, if you could strengthen India, then it could act also to make the balance of power and restore it in a manner that stability can prevail. This was the US expectation. Of course, the nuclear deal has not gone the way that it was envisaged, but the relationship has gone forward. We might complain that it is slow. It has not gained the pace with which it was held promised during the nuclear deal itself. But we can see that especially in the arena of defense, there has been considerable progress in terms of India's greater purchase of US aircraft and other armaments, deals which actually also increase the interoperability between the forces in terms of various agreements like LAMOA and BICA. So the point is that even if you look at the exercises which the military has carried out, there is a closeness between the military which has developed over a period of time. Of course, no relationship is perfect. The Americans are disappointed that the pace is slow. We are disappointed that the way America actually deals with us in defense, and especially with defense armaments and imports, is that there is growing dependence on the US because there is no transfer of technology. And this, therefore, comes to the issue of a decision taken by India with the trade-offs that it means in terms of strategic autonomy. Because we are giving up our ability to be indigenously self-sufficient in defense and increasing our dependence on the United States. But we think, and that's a decision India has made, that it is worth it. Of course, India, if you really look at it overall, has made sure that it is not reliant just on one part, It is today distributed across Russia, United States, France, and Israel as major powers. So you can see that the relationship with America has definitely moved closer, but not anywhere near an alliance. India does not expect, when we have a problem, which we have now in Ladakh, that the Americans can actually come to our aid and fight for us. We don't expect them. Yes, there could be some sort of an intelligence sharing agreement which could be there. You could cooperate with them in keeping the Indo-Pacific as free and open. We could cooperate with the United States in building an architecture. And that's where actually there are differences of opinion as to what should be the architecture which governs the Indo-Pacific. And what would be China's role in it? Would it have any role at all? So if you really look at Prime Minister Modi's statement, I think in 2018, at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, India at that time conceptualized that architecture with China being one of them. But that's not the US conceptualization of the architecture of the Indo-Pacific. So while there is closeness, there is also a lot of distance to travel. And as time goes by, and depending now on how China's behavior gets more aggressive and assertive, one can expect that the closeness between the United States and India would actually increase. But to say that this relationship is going to become an alliance, I think, is running ahead of our time.
Okay. General, this, I think you've made it clear that an alliance is not on the cards right now. But just looking at the relationship, even as it is today between India and the United States, there are two things that occur to me. One is that we already, the India-US convergence is on some specific issues. It's issue-based. On the other hand, there are divergences on other issues. Iran is one example that comes to mind immediately. And India's own options in dealing with Iran have been, to some extent, constrained by its relationship with both the United States, with Israel, as well as with Saudi Arabia. The other flip side of this is that, so on the one hand, you see India's strategic autonomy or whatever, its options in some ways being narrowed. On the other hand, proponents of a closer relationship with the United States will say, look, you're scared of China, so you're not deepening your relationships with the United States. But isn't that being scared of China already affecting your strategic autonomy?
Yeah, actually, this is a question for Indian statecraft that so far, and if you see what happened after Doklam, the fact that we went through Wuhan and we went to Mamallapuram, where we showed definitely sensitivities to China's concern about our relationship with other countries, probably gave them some sort of a message that India could be put under some pressure and made to modulate its strategic behavior. And I think probably Ladakh probably happened with that background in mind, that the Chinese, before they did Ladakh, would have learned from what happened after Doklam. After all, in Doklam, they continued to increase their military occupation of Doklam. Now they are in full occupation, military structures. India has kept quiet. We went through all these peace, and yet the Chinese have done Ladakh. So the question really is, when do you draw the line? And I think after Galwan, which probably was a miscalculation on everybody's part, that option about acquiescing to Chinese pressure is no longer easy for India's political leadership. Or let us be clear about one thing. India's problems is with the ruling Communist Party of China, not with China itself. We have an economic relationship which we would like to strengthen, but we definitely like to solve our problems peacefully, and definitely not through the use of force, which they have done, in fact, in Ladakh. So as long as that situation continues, I do not think that we can go back to what they used to call after Doklam a reset. In fact, the relationship is actually going to be more adversarial, and therefore managing this relationship is this challenge of statecraft. So we can't possibly manage the relationship by trying to bandwagon. We'll have to treat this relationship again based on issues. And we'll have to make it very clear that India is very cognizant of the need for strategic autonomy, that we cannot be pressurized in our decisions. I think what has happened is the loss of strategic autonomy post-Doklam has given the Chinese a mistaken impression that they can put pressure on India and get away. But Galwan, I think, has changed that calculation. I hope so. And so what it has done and what the crisis has done, Ladakh crisis, is to increase the sensitivity of India to Chinese pressure. And that sensitivity will be reflected in a much more firmer handling of China rather than being soft towards it. I think that would be the change in behavior, and that would be it'll be driven by India's quest for strategic autonomy.
Okay. General, going forward from here, how do you see the relationship between India and China developing?
Well, as is a cliche, going to be more complex than before, but I would think it presents an opportunity for India and challenges at the same time. And the opportunity is that we can now actually use varied forces of cooperation to try and deal with China. Because what COVID-19 has done is also it has galvanized the rest of the world and exposed China to its true nature. And therefore, Europe, which was embracing China in a big way, United States, Japan, Southeast Asia are all very sensitive now to Chinese assertiveness and in some cases aggressiveness. I think India has the opportunity to be part of this particular sentiment to deal with China. So while I'm not suggesting that this is a alliance of nations, but I think there's an opportunity here because there are common interests involved across the globe. So now it's a challenge for India's statecraft and its implementation by its diplomatic expertise. The challenge is that India's economy, which has been devastated by COVID-19, would take time to recover. We still require the Chinese economic relationship for quite some time before we can truly say that we are no longer dependent on China for our economic benefit. And that's going to be a challenge because how do you balance the political and the military side with what is actually an economic imperative? And that's the challenge. So there is no easy formula on the cards here. But one thing is for sure, that this relationship, which was on a path of recovery after 1962, has suffered a severe setback and will not be able to climb back into its position it was pre-Ladakh for quite some time. How that is going to be managed, especially without getting into a military conflict of any nature, is not only a challenge for India, it is today a global challenge. So that challenge actually is there between the United States and China, between Japan and China, between the nations of Southeast Asia. So everybody is in a similar situation. How do you deal with China? And that is not the case that you can cast China aside, you can contain China. make a Cold War type of situation out of China. I don't think that should be the approach. The idea should be to get China to change its strategic behavior by showing it that it will not be able to achieve what it wants through the type of behavior it has so far exhibited, which is assertiveness, aggressiveness, disdain for international rules, especially with the UNCLOS, and to be part of the Committee of Nations like it has promised to do, but from which it is now trying to say that it is going to be the rule setter. That has to change within China. Nobody can change it from the outside except if we act all together. And that is the great opportunity.
Okay, that's interesting, General. It's a subtle argument that you're making, but you've made very clearly about how we have to deal with China in the coming years. And, these old formulas like Cold War and all don't really apply here. Thank you, General, and thank you, Suyash. And thank you for joining us on All Things Policy.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.
I hope you enjoyed that show. It's been a really fun week this week, as it is almost every week, but this week was particularly fun. Farmesh Shahani was on Cyrus Says, great conversation over there. We had a crossover event. Vineet Kanabar, host of the Storytellers and Storytellers podcast, came on Uncle Please Sit. Really interesting conversation about the future of digital content. Besides that, it was the 50th episode this week of Agla Station Adulthood. Congratulations to Ritasha and Ayushi. But yeah, they're 50 episodes down. They had Rekha Jha as the guest on that show. On Advertising is Dead, Varun had the founders of Foxy Morons, Suvir Bajaj and Pratik Gupta on. Another really, really interesting conversation. So full of interesting conversations this week, and I hope to see you again next week.
Namaskar, dear Bandhu. My name is Ashish Vidyarthi. These are truly challenging times, and in these times, we need hope. Do take time to listen to my podcast, Begin the Journey. Available on IVM Podcasts, website, app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, there is hope because there's one life and we are alive.